Ah yes, what a beautiful song, one that stirs the hearts of all patriotic Germans and inspires them with pride and courage, the ultimate expression of Germanhood. Except that most Germans these days don't know it that well, and most of those who do really don't think that it reflects German values at all. But if you upload a 40-second short on the subject that gets seen by 500,000 people, you very quickly learn that there is a lot of misinformation surrounding this one song, and a surprisingly large number of people who are prepared to say in public that they think Hitler was right. There's not much I can do about that, but let me just take this opportunity to explain a few things about the song, and in particular to set a few things straight. And I'm going to start with when it was written, because that is the source of a lot of inexplicably angry comments. The song was written in 1938, and that, I'm afraid, is a verified historical fact. A lot of people have told me that it was written years before then, and 1938 is the date of publication, but that is not true, even if a lot of websites claim it to be so. And I know it's not true because I have the writer's word on the matter. His name was Ferdinand Friedrich Hermann Niel, although he was much better known under his pen name Herms Niel. He gave an interview for the Viennese newspaper Das Kleine Volksblatt, which was printed in the issue dated May the 12th, 1940. At the time, Austria had been annexed by Germany and formed part of the Greater German Reich, and that is the English pronunciation. Please don't at me. The press was at that time fully under the control of the Nazis, and so was naturally full of praise for everything the Germans were doing, and full of criticism for everything everyone else was doing. Of course, there was at the time a war going on, but still, referring to Churchill in a news article, not an opinion piece, a news article, as the supreme warmonger, as if that were an official title, is taking things a step too far even in wartime. But in the middle of the paper is a 2-page interview with Herms Niel conducted at his home near Potsdam, in which he talks, among other things, about his inspiration for the song Erika. The way he tells it, inspiration came to him in the summer of 1938 while he was out walking his dog, a German spaniel named Dina. On this particular day, she disturbed a wasp's nest, prompting Niel to help her win her battle, although he doesn't explain exactly how. Anyway, having triumphed over the wasps, he found himself looking at what he took to be some heather growing nearby, scientific name Erika tetralix. And that is how he says he came up with the idea of a song about a soldier looking at the heather and being reminded of his girlfriend. He then says that one of his neighbours later told him that what he'd seen wasn't actually heather at all, but thyme. But it was too late. The song had been written. Now, of course, it is possible that Niel made up the whole story just so that he could claim credit for something that wasn't actually his work. But there is no actual evidence that the song was sung or known before 1938, and so that seems to be very unlikely. So it was written during the Nazi period, but was it actual Nazi propaganda? Well, the article does have a photo of Herms Niel in full Nazi uniform, as he was, at the time, band leader of the marching band of the Reich Labour Front. But we do have to be fair and point out that anybody who wanted any kind of career in those days had to submit to the will of the party. Nevertheless, he was the party's most prolific writer of military songs. There is no explicitly political message within the song. It's written in 2/4 time, which makes it a great song for marching, and that is in fact exactly what it was intended for. A young man, we assume a soldier, sees heather growing in the fields, and this reminds him of his sweetheart back home who just happens to be called Erika. As well as the simple marching rhythm, the melody had a few breaks in it, 3 beats at a time. In most recordings, these beats are played on the drums. But when marching, soldiers could stamp their feet, This was a favourite technique of Niel and was intended to evoke the sound of distant gunfire. The fact that it's a marching song doesn't make it bad, but it does make it unsuitable as a national anthem. It says nothing about what values the nation holds or what actually binds it together, and for a pacifist, post-Nazi state, a marching song is definitely inappropriate. And to be fair, the lyrics are way more innocent than those of some other national anthems, such as the very bloodthirsty Marseillaise, the national anthem of France, or to give it its original title, the war song of the Army of the Rhine. The tune it's most often sung to, by the way, is in 4/4 time. You could march to it, but it's not actually written as a march. I'd also like to mention the British national anthem, but only to debunk a point that came up in the comments several times. The official version does not include a verse about killing Scotsmen. That was an unofficial verse sung by English soldiers during the Jacobite Revolution and praising Field Marshal George Wade. That is, until Wade was defeated by the Scots and was subsequently fired. The English stopped singing that extra verse very quickly after that. And by the way, the melody that it's most often sung to these days is written in 3/4 time, which means that the only people who could use it as a march would be those with 3 legs. No, what's problematic about Erika is not the words, but the way it was used in Nazi propaganda. It was one of a very large number of marching songs written by Herms Niel for the regime, and was not only sung by soldiers, but frequently played on domestic radio. The idea was to romanticize and glorify the concept of war. A lot of Niel's songs featured women's names prominently, and in fact, he got letters from lots of women begging him to write a song in their name. Promote the idea that the most romantic thing a man can do is to go off and kill other men, and you'll have no shortage of young men willing to do exactly that. This might seem to be reading between the lines a bit too much, but let's not forget who we're talking about here. Herms Niel, whose next big project, and he talks about this in the interview as well, was to write a new musical arrangement for a song about bombing England. At the time the interview was published, the Battle of Britain was mere weeks away. There was, in fact, no major problem with Erika being sung after the war by various mainstream entertainers as a kind of a folk song, and in fact it was even included in the official songbook of the German armed forces. But its history and its militaristic musical setting means that most Germans feel, at best, uneasy about it. It just doesn't align with modern-day German values. It has, though, now become quite popular among neo-Nazis and other far-right groups, which only goes to reinforce the general perception of it as a Nazi song. Pretty much the only Germans now prepared to sing it in public are those with some very trenchant views on national identity. It's also become quite well known outside of Germany and is often presented as a typical piece of German culture. And it is very possible that there are a lot of people who simply like the song and don't know what it's generally associated with. But judging by the comments that I've been getting, a lot of Americans who say they like the song also seem to think that the Nazis were misunderstood. So there it is. Erika is not a hateful song, but it was written for a hateful regime and used in their propaganda. As a marching song, it's great, but it really wouldn't be appropriate as a national anthem. If this is a period of history that you're interested in, you might like to take a look at this video about what Berlin could have looked like had Germany won the war.